Welcome to Dadograms. Today I want to talk about words. Not politics, not poetry, just plain old words. Because in the adult world, words don't just have meaning, they have consequences. I'm Jason M. Garrett, a retired Navy commander and pilot, and I created Dadograms to teach my children and all of you how to succeed in life. And one way to win is to stack the odds in your favor. And by using the right words and avoiding the wrong ones, you can definitely do that. I listen to a lot of podcasts, especially stories about people who've overcome the odds and achieved something great. And I love those stories. But there's a trend I've noticed lately where people are overusing a specific word in their story. It's a word that shocks me every time I hear it. It's a really, really bad word. It's the F word. And no, not the one you're thinking. This one's even worse than that. The word is fired, as in, I was fired from my job. And they start off their stories as if that's a great place to start. But as you listen on, you realize they didn't really get fired. They used the word incorrectly. And it's damaging when they do that because being fired damages their credibility as an expert the moment they say it. And again, when you realize that they actually misused the word. Now look, if you were ever really fired, you have to own up to it, but you can recover from it. Sometimes people just don't fit into an organization that they were hired into, but it's not something to brag about or try to impress anyone with. If you weren't fired from a job and left under different circumstances, then don't use the F word. Use the correct one, because as I said, words have meanings. So just to make sure we all know what it means to be fired, let me explain it. Fired means you were the problem. Like you missed deadlines, you didn't follow through on what you promised, you kept missing work because you were sick, you violated policy, you couldn't deliver, you were late to work or you skipped out early, you stole from the workplace, you had a personality that decreased the productivity of the team, you caused drama, you had a negative attitude, you were causing dissension, meaning you were using your negative attitude to poison the attitude of other employees, or maybe you just plain old sucked at what you were doing. These are all unacceptable in the workplace. And when the boss told you you no longer had a job with them, that's when you were fired. It means you were terminated for cause. Now again, if that's what happened and you learned from it, well, that happens. But in the podcast that I listen to with these great stories, that's not what happened. Usually as I listen further into the story, I realize what really happened was that they were not fired, but they were laid off. And there's a big difference between these words. If your company shut down or eliminated a department or let go 10% of the workforce to cut costs, that's not being fired. That's being laid off. And that's a totally different thing. It's far better than being fired. Fired is bad. Laid off is just unfortunate. See? And when we are talking about your future, the difference between the two is really important to hiring managers. Now, there's another phrase out there that kind of floats somewhere in the middle, and that's the words let go, as in, I was let go from my job. It's vague, it's fuzzy. People use it when they don't know how to explain what happened or when they're trying to make it sound less bad. But here's the problem. To a hiring manager, let go usually sounds like a candied over version of fired. And that's the way we assume it went until you prove otherwise. So when you get into an interview, be clear and precise in the way you explain yourself. Know what happened, use the right term, because your language shapes your credibility and your hireability. And believe me, I know, because after all, folks like me in our 40s and 50s, we know what these words mean. And we're the ones running the companies you're applying for now. So, unless you were truly fired, and yes, you must own up to it, don't label yourself with a red flag that you don't need to carry. Now, fired versus laid off is the most common word mix-up I hear, but there are others out there that draw our attention as well. Let me walk you through a few of the most common ones. How about internship versus job? If you did an internship, say so. Don't say I worked at Lockheed Martin if you just shadowed someone for the summer. Internships are valuable, but stretching the truth, it isn't. When I hear job, I think salary, responsibilities, results, longevity. If that's not what you had, don't claim it. Another is freelance, entrepreneur, and gig work. These are radically different words, but they seem to be used interchangeably. So did you deliver for Uber Eats or Instacart? That's just gig work. Did you design logos for Fiverr or writing for Upwork? That's freelancing. And none of these are even remotely close to entrepreneurship. That's a totally different thing. To be an entrepreneur, you're creating a business, building a product, hiring people, signing clients, and most telling of all, you are taking on the financial risk of failure while striving to make profit. That's being an entrepreneur. Now, all three of these are legit, but don't oversell the wrong thing. We can tell. The next one is exposure versus experience. Did you sit in on a few meetings and take notes? If so, that's exposure. Did you set the agenda, lead the meetings, and own the outcome? That's experience. Be honest. For exposure, which I know a lot of you get out of college, explain it this way. I supported the project team and gained exposure to project management. Sounds good. It's accurate, it's professional, and builds trust. The next one is mentoring versus networking. Did you visit with a successful person you admire over coffee? That's networking. Do you talk regularly with someone who knows you, challenges you, and supports you over time? That's mentoring. I served in the Navy for over 28 years and had one person I would call a mentor. He was my boss during my first deployment in the year 2000. Since that time, we talked at least once during each tour, meaning about every 2 or 3 years, throughout my career to talk about career progression and strategy. When I retired, he was the guy who spoke at my ceremony. That's an example of a mentor. If you call every connection a mentor, it signals you may not understand how real mentorship works. The next one is teamwork versus group work. You didn't lead a team if you made a few slides in a class presentation. That's barely even working on a group project. It would be far better to say that, something like, I contributed to a group project and coordinated the final product, or something along those lines. That's honest and that's enough. Don't make claims for the whole project if you just contributed to part of it. For me, in the Navy, when I deployed to sea with a helicopter detachment, somewhere between 19 and 25 of us pilots, aircrew members, and helicopter mechanics would come together, we'd train together, we'd undergo training operations on a ship together for a few months, then we'd go out on a long cruise deployment for up to 6, even 7 or 8 months at a time. When we returned, we would have our aircraft go through an in-depth inspection. Then we disband and form up another detachment and do it all over again. That's teamwork. Do you see the difference? So why does this all matter? The words you use tell the world about you and how seriously they should take you. If you exaggerate or misuse terms, it doesn't make you sound like an expert. It makes you sound immature or worse, deceitful. And in hiring, partnerships, or anything that requires trust, honesty and credibility matters a lot. Okay, so if you've ever had that nagging doubt that the words you use to describe yourself just might not be right, try this. This is what I do. Audit your language. Look up definitions. Make sure the words you're using match your reality. Listen to others ahead of you in life and seek to understand the words they're using to describe their experiences. We are eclectic beings, always learning from each other. Understand your story. For you, were you fired, laid off, let go? Be clear in explaining yourself. Then practice using the right terms. Words have specific meanings, so make sure that you're using the right ones to describe yourself and practice saying them. Because the people listening, they'll know the difference. And of course, be honest. Don't oversell or undersell yourself. Precision builds trust, and hiring managers have so much experience, they're going to see through the BS pretty easy. And if you're ever unsure what words to use, reach out. Heck, I'm approachable. I can help. That's what Dadograms are for. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you listened this far, go ahead and subscribe to this channel, hit that thumbs up button, and all that cool stuff. Until next time, speak right to win big, and the best of luck to each and every one of you out there.